Morning or good afternoon, whatever the case may be. You guys are going to be taking notes today on something called the European Union. Remember that as we've been learning about Europe this month, we're learning about globalization in different forms. We just finished up learning about NATO and the UN, which are, for the most part, military or defense forms of globalization. They work for those reasons. We're going to be learning about a different group in Europe today called the European Union. Now before we start, take a look at this drawing of this neighborhood. Each of the different homes looks like they have different amenities. We see this first house at the top. Looks like it's got a basketball court in the backyard. This one's got a beautiful garden. This one's got a big pool, baseball field in this one, skate park, soccer field, giant trampoline, rock climbing, I guess, in this one. So the question is asking you, if you were going to move into this neighborhood, which yard would you choose? Which house would you choose based on its yard? What's the reasoning? Maybe you'd choose this one if you're really into soccer. You want to be able to play soccer, so you're going to live in this house. Maybe you really like gardening, or you like having a nice yard to relax in. Maybe you might choose this one. Whatever the answer may be, you're choosing this based on the resource that the yard provides. Now imagine that one of your neighbors that lives in this neighborhood with you is proposing something. They want to get rid of all these fences. And they want to have just one giant backyard. Meaning that you guys get to share in all these things. So you won't just have a soccer field anymore. You'll have access to a skate park now. You'll have access to a baseball field. You can go swimming if you want. You can go and relax in the garden. You can go rock climbing or play basketball or jump on a trampoline. Because you guys are all sharing this stuff. Now, keep this in mind too, that would mean that everyone else also shares your yard. So maybe you're sitting at home and you're trying to relax inside your house, and all the neighborhood people are decided that they're going to come out and play soccer. And that might disrupt your peace. Do you support removing all these fences and sharing yards? Why or why not? Think about your answer. On your notes, and you guys should have some notes now, can you make sure that you fill in this essential question? How is globalization an advantage or disadvantage? Or and disadvantage? Also fill in this learning target. I want you guys to be able to describe the role of the European Union. As we go through this slideshow, pause wherever you need to in order to catch up with notes. Your notes are divided into basically the 5 W's, though one of them is missing. So I'm going to be going through notes, and we're going to be jumping back and forth. It's not going to go straight down the line. For the when and the what, basically, I'm putting this together, that the European Union, the idea of it's been around since 1955. Now, that's just the idea. It was not official until 1993. That might be something to write down. The official date's 1993, but the idea has been around since 55. It was an informal agreement that became formalized in 1993. Why did they do this? Well, basically, they wanted to create a sense of belonging and interdependence among its members. I want you guys to keep in mind that World War I, World War II, both those wars heavily involved the European countries fighting each other. They were fighting each other for lots of different reasons, and people obviously after World War II want to avoid a World War III. So they're going to try to come up with this new idea that's going to make war unthinkable. Okay? They're going to create this idea of interdependence. Please make sure that you write that in correctly. Interdependence. They're going to need each other. Okay? By sharing resources like coal and steel, that was the original purpose. Okay? Everyone shares this resource, just like the yard before was shared. They're going to need each other. And this idea is that if you need each other, you're not going to go to war with each other. Next slide here. Continuing on with the what. The European Union has a motto. They have a simple motto that says, united in diversity. I would jot that down if I were you. What that means is that the members work together for advantages that can't be done alone. Basically, by working together, they become stronger, and they have something called leverage. Now, I underline that. That might be a clue that you guys need to write that down. Leverage is anything that you use for dealing with others that gives you an upper hand. Okay. So, for instance, let's say you have certain skills that help you read people's minds easier. Okay, that might help you with playing cards against other people. You have leverage. The kind of leverage that they're talking about, though, were 3. Okay, so bullet pointed, by working together, they would have more money. If they share all their money, that means they have more. There's more people, okay, and more land area. Now, what do we mean by this? Keep in mind that after World War II, the world is going to be a lot more globalized. Everyone, all these countries are going to be trading with each other. They're going to be buying and selling back and forth. Now, in making deals, the richest countries are going to have more leverage. United States, right after World War II, becomes richest country in the world. Okay. Now, when it comes to being the richest country in the world, by having so much money, by having so much land, by having so much people, that gave us leverage. If we were going to negotiate with like a small country like, let's say, Peru over here, okay, it's a poorer, smaller country. We have more leverage. We basically are going to get what we want. Okay. If they want to deal with us, they've got to do what we say. Okay. Same thing, if we're going to be dealing with, let's say, China, okay, at the time. China does have more people, okay, but they have less money. We get what we want out of it for the most part. Europe, remember, is made up of a whole bunch of tiny countries. And after World War II, they are all very poor. And so they decide, if they're ever going to make deals with the United States, with rich countries like the US, they need to figure out how they can all work together to create one giant group that's going to have leverage over the US. Or even if it's not leverage, they're going to be able to have fair negotiations. If you're familiar with things like Voltron, Power Rangers, the idea was that you got these different parts that, yes, they are alone, okay, and they are strong enough alone, but when they finally combine together, they become this unstoppable force. For the WHO, you might want to write this down. EU members, okay, comprise of 28 different countries. There are 28 countries in the EU. And with that, they have a combined 500 million people. You don't need to write down every one of these countries, okay, but some of these countries might be familiar to you. If you take a look at this map, every country here that is in color is a part of the EU, or wants to be. Countries that are in pink, like Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Turkey, they want to join. They are in waiting. Membership requirements. Who gets to be a member? Okay, keep in mind that there are those 3 countries, like Turkey, that want to join. First off, you have to have a stable democratic government. You have to have a proven track record that you are a democratic government that is stable, meaning you've got established laws, you follow human rights, okay, you protect the rights of minorities, etc. Okay, make sure that you're getting this stuff down. The second requirement, if you want to join the European Union, you gotta be capitalist-ish, meaning you gotta have a functioning market economy. Okay, so no communist countries. Now, socialism does count. Okay, there are some socialist countries, because even with socialism, there's still some aspects of capitalism. You also have to abide by EU laws. The EU makes certain laws, and everyone's required to follow them. Now, that doesn't mean that the EU is going to make laws for the entire country, but they do have certain rules that everyone that is part of the EU has to follow. Next slide here. Why would somebody want to join the EU? Why is the EU created in the first place? Okay. Keep this in mind that the EU is competing with the rest of the world. So let's just look at when Europe is trying to trade against the United States. How do they stack up against the United States? EU countries have a combined, okay, they have more people, okay, than the United States. The United States has 300 million people. If we were negotiating with the EU, they actually have more than us combined, 500 million. When it comes to money, they have more money than us. They have 14 trillion. The United States is at 13.5. Now, I want you guys to imagine if it was just Germany, the one country in the EU, if they were coming against us, they would not have this much money. And so we would have more leverage. And so when you deal with the United States, okay, the EU works together to make deals with the US. Just looking at this chart, when it comes to population, We already know that China's got the highest population. Any individual country in the world, China's got the most. Okay, United States is about here. Here's where the EU is. When it comes to land, how much land does each country have? United States, we are a huge country. We've got a lot of land. So does China. The EU, if we were looking at individual countries, would be really, really low. However, as a combination, they become a little bit more of a competitive force. So their GDP, the gross domestic product, which you remember again, is their wealth. How rich is each country? If we take a look here, the EU, very competitive. Okay, a little bit more than the United States. All right, so what's the purpose of the European Union? The EU doesn't handle all government business. Make sure that you have that down. They do not handle all, though they do come with some laws. Each country is still going to have to make its own laws. It's still going to have its own military. They still have their own leaders that they vote for. Yeah. So why would you bother joining the EU? What's the point? One, there's a common currency, meaning the money. It used to be that if you lived in France, the kind of money that you spent was called francs. If you lived in Great Britain, in England, you would have the pounds. If you lived in, let's say, I don't know, Spain, you had your own kind of money. That made it really hard to trade. That made it really hard to do business. If you were living in France, okay, you would have to convert your money over to British pounds if you were trying to do business with England, okay, vice versa. However, now that they are all part of the EU, they share something called the euro. Make sure you have that down. It makes it a lot easier to trade. You don't have to do that conversion anymore. The EU also creates projects together to improve trade, to improve education, farming, and industry. Some of those things, there are 4 things. Please have these down. First off, there's no tariffs between EU countries. Okay. Remember, tariffs are those taxes that governments will place on foreign goods, okay, because they're trying to make sure that the people within their country buy less of products that come from somewhere else. That doesn't exist in the EU. There's no tariffs. The second thing is citizens of each country can freely move among other countries. You don't have to worry about passports when you're in the EU. There's something called the Schengen area. Some of the countries in the EU basically say that, hey, if you're in Germany, you can easily go to Italy. No need for a passport, no special IDs, no visas. You can freely move over there. You can go there for work or just vacation. Citizens can live and work in any EU country. Okay. You don't have to get renewed citizenship to go to that other country. If I am a British citizen living in England, but I get a job in Germany, I can go to Germany easily without having to go through paperwork to get a job. And let's say I do move to Germany, but I'm still an English citizen. I can vote in German elections. You can vote in local elections if you are part of a member of the EU countries. Let's talk a little bit more about the euro. Okay. The euro isn't used by every one of the EU countries, but it is accepted by every EU country. Some countries still have their own, in addition to the euro. It is known as something called the common currency. If you can please write that down, that would be really helpful to you later on. Common currency means this is the one that is most common. Here's what it looks like. Yeah. So, there are a few countries that want to join. Here are the non-members. So Turkey. Turkey wants to join, but they can't because, once again, they haven't proven stability. You have to be a stable democratic country. And Turkey's been going through a lot of issues. Some people even say that the current government of Turkey right now is not a very democratic government. Switzerland doesn't want to join. Okay? They are a European country, and they refuse to join because they already have a high standard living. Okay? They're already doing well enough for themselves. They don't think that they need to be a part of a larger group in order to trade competitively. Iceland doesn't want to join because, once again, remember, you have to follow those EU laws, and they don't. Part of Iceland's culture is fishing, okay? And one of the EU laws is about regulation of fishing. They don't want countries overfishing the place. Iceland doesn't agree with that. Okay. Russia, prefers to be independent. They want to be able to control their own resources. And some countries choose not to join the EU for that same reason. If you need to go back and watch this video over again to catch up on stuff, please do so. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is also link a video that you can watch on my teacher page, where you can layer additional information, confirm information, but I do want you guys writing a summary for this stuff as well. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow.